Everyone, welcome to our third writing workshop. I'm Corby, I'm from Ripple Foundation, and I'm back here again with the last of our workshops in this set. Before I get started again, I'm just going to wait for a few minutes, just like last time, just to make sure that everybody can hear me fine, everybody can see me fine. So I'll just wait for some comments to come in, and then I'll get started with today's workshop. We also have our volunteers here today, so Zala and Sahar, who are going to be moderating the comments. If you have any questions throughout the workshop, feel free to add them into the box, and they'll take care of the answers. So I don't see any comments. So I'm assuming that everybody can hear me fine. In case you're not able to, then feel free to just put in a comment, and I'll stop. So great. Then we can get started with today's workshop. Because today's workshop is the third workshop in our series, I'll kind of do a brief recap of the workshops which we did previously. So our first workshop was Brainstorm Bonanza. And Brainstorm Bonanza was about coming up with ideas for our stories. So in that particular workshop, we kind of learned about how characters, setting, and action comes together to create ideas. In our second workshop, which was Mixed Bag Mayhem, we learned a little bit more about creating interesting characters. So what are some of the details we need to create our characters, their physical description, their emotions, their feelings, and so on. So that kind of taught us how we could create characters. And in today's workshop, we are going to be learning how to plot stories. So we are going to bring together all of our learnings from the last two workshops to understand how to really write a story end to end. So I just saw the comments come in, and I think everybody can hear me fine. Thanks, Tracy and Zala, for confirming. So I'll carry on with that. Since you've met me in the last two workshops, you already know I'm Corby. I'm part of Ripple Foundation. I'll just give a brief introduction today of the foundation, since you already probably know us. As you know, we have our annual writing contest where kids are encouraged to submit their stories, and then the winning stories are published as books. This is a list of all the books which have been published, and you might have also seen 4 of our books which I had shown in the previous workshops, which some of our winning authors have written, and all the sales from all of these books go to charity of the winner's choice. You're also probably familiar with our writing workshops. So we have been conducting writing workshops at various libraries, bookstores, and literary festivals for the last few years. Right now, because of the current situation, we've kind of moved online, and that's what we have been trying to do even as part of Facebook. And we also have a blog in which we youth are encouraged to submit their stories, and we've seen that a lot of stories which they've written resonate with their peer group. So without waiting much longer, I'll launch into today's workshop. So for today's workshop, we have 2 more activities. So as you must be knowing, we've kind of put all of our activity sheets on our website. So to download the activity sheets, you need to go to our website, click on the sheets as per the workshop, and then you can easily download them. I'll just hold up the sheets so that it's also easy for you to see. So these are the 2 activities for our workshop today. So the first one is Plotline Play-By-Play, plotting along, and then the second one is Plotline Play-By-Play, story prompts. So I'll hold up my board so that it's a little bit easier for you all to understand. But essentially, when we're trying to tell a story, we kind of go through the various events, right? So the story usually starts off with an introduction, then there's then there's rising action, then we end up going to the conflict. Ultimately, we have a climax, falling action, and then the resolution. So today what we'll do is, I'm actually going to be using an example to kind of take you through each of these stages and show you how stories are actually just events one after another, which finally end up going to the climax and then the ultimate resolution. So the story which I'll use today is Three Little Pigs, and I'll read it out for you as I go along, in case some of you had read it a while back and you've kind of forgotten some of the parts. So I'll get started now. So Three Little Pigs, something which all of you would be quite familiar with. Once upon a time, there were three little pigs, and the time came for them to leave home and seek their fortunes. Before they left, their mother told them, whatever you do it the best that you can, because that's the way to get along in the world. So this first paragraph is essentially the introduction. So if I go back to my story chart, you'll see that the introduction kind of lets us know about the setting, who the characters are, and where the story is taking place. So we know that there were three little pigs, and that now they're leaving from home. And their mother's also given them a piece of advice about how they should go about in the real world and how they can manage their lives. The next part of the story, the first little pig built his house out of straw because it was the easiest thing to do. The second little pig built his house out of sticks. This was a little bit stronger than a straw house. The third little pig built his house out of bricks. So this is where we kind of come to the rising action now, where we know that each of the pigs, they're kind of trying to live on their own in the real world, and they're building their homes. And we know that one of the pigs has built a straw house, one of them has built a house out of sticks, and one of them has built a brick house. So now we know that something's going to happen after this. We're getting to know more details, and this is where the rising action comes in. The next paragraph, one night, the big bad wolf, who clearly loved to eat fat little piggies, came along and saw the first little pig in his house of straw. He said, let me in, little pig, or I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in. Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin, said the little pig. But of course, the wolf did blow the house in and ate the first little pig. The wolf then came to the house of sticks. Let me in, little pig, or I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in. Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin, said the little pig, but the wolf blew that house in two and ate the second little pig. So I'll go back to my story chart. This is when we come to the conflict. So now we know that there's a major problem in the story. The pigs are not left alone. There's a big bad wolf who's come and who's capturing them one by one. So the first pig, whose house was made of straw, was not able to survive, and the wolf blew the house down and ate up the pig. The second house, which was built of sticks, and we might have thought that that might survive, that also didn't survive, and that house was also ruined, and eventually the pig was eaten up. So now there's a conflict. So we know that there's this wolf who's really dangerous, and now we're trying to identify, okay, is the third pig going to survive? So this is when we're coming towards the climax. So I move to the next paragraph. The wolf then came to the house of bricks. Let me in, cried the wolf. Or I'll huff and I'll puff till I blow your house in. Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin, said the pigs. Well, the wolf huffed and huffed, but he could not blow down that brick house. But the wolf was a sly old wolf, and he climbed up on the roof to look for a way into the brick house. The little pig saw the wolf climb up on the roof and lit a roaring fire in the fireplace and placed in it a large kettle of water. When the wolf finally found the hole in the chimney, he crawled down and right into that kettle of water, and that was the end of his troubles with the big bad wolf. So that's the final climax, where things get really interesting. So first the wolf tries to blow down the brick house, but the brick house is much more sturdy now and it survives. So he's not able to break it down, but then he has more ideas of trying to get to the pig. So he climbs up onto the roof, and this is where there's the actual struggle between the main character, who's the pig who's trying to save himself, and the wolf, who's the villain in this case. So if you think back to the our workshop last time, this is actually the struggle between the protagonist and the antagonist. And this is where everything gets interesting for the reader, because we really want the pig to survive, but we're thinking that, oh, what's going to happen if the wolf comes and captures the pig? But here it's a happy ending. So ultimately, when the wolf does try to get into the house, the pig has already created a big kettle of water, boiling water, and then the wolf falls into that, and that's the end of it. So once the climax is over, next we go into the falling action. So the next paragraph is, the next day, the little pig invited his mother over, and she said, you see, it is just as I told you. The way to get along in the world is to do things as well as you can. Fortunately for that little pig, he learned that lesson, and he just lived happily ever after. So this is where we come to the falling action, where things are now fine. The pig goes to meet his mother, and the mother reminds him of the advice she had given in the beginning and how that had helped him. And ultimately the resolution, where we know that the pig is now able to live happily because the wolf isn't going to bother him anymore. And that's the entire chain which you see. So Three Little Pigs is a really simple story, but it actually goes through the story plot really well. It has all the elements which we spoke about, and that's why it's such a popular story. So right from the introduction to the way the action rises, to the ultimate conflict and the climax, and ultimately the falling action and the resolution. So this is our first activity, which is around how we can create this sort of a story plot for many stories. So the first activity which we've created for you is plotting along. So you can think of any story which you might have read on your own. It doesn't need to be Three Little Pigs, because you can apply the structure to all of the stories. And then we've created these blank spaces for you where you can actually fill in each of the paragraphs or the points which come under each of these categories. So on this sheet, we've kind of created blank spaces for you where you can write down the introduction, the rising action, the conflict, climax, falling action, and the resolution for any story which you've left. And it's going to be useful, an useful activity for you, because you'll be able to kind of learn from stories in the past what the different parts of the story are. So it's not really about just sitting down and writing paragraph after paragraph. It's actually thinking about how each of those paragraphs lead to the next paragraph and how it ultimately helps to create a story. Because every story, as you would have learned from the first workshop, needs to have a conflict. If there's no conflict, then there's nothing interesting happening. If it's just somebody who's just walking from one place to another and the person just reaches there without any issues at all, then that's not really a story, because you won't really be interested in finding out what happens. So I'll do a brief recap and tell you a little bit about what to fill in each of these spaces, and then you can do that with any example which you would like to. So the introduction is all about, what information the writer gives you at the beginning of the story. So for example, what the setting is, where is the story set, what is the time, and also introducing some of the main characters who we are going to get acquainted with as the story goes on. Rising action is what event in the early part of the story draws you in and wants you to keep reading. So this is more about like, okay, what's really interesting me right now? So once you know what the characters are, what exactly are they doing? Do they have any hopes or any ambitions which they are trying to reach? And this is what really propels the reader to go from the first page to the next pages and so on. Then we come to the conflict. So the conflict is really interesting, and there can be several different conflicts. So in the Three Little Pigs story, which is a simple story, so there's just one conflict, but in more advanced stories, there can be many different types of conflicts. So there can be conflicts with a character and between one character and another character. It can also be a character struggling with something else. Maybe the character is trying to go on a very difficult journey, and then the path is very scary. So it's not just that there are characters who are there. It could be like other problems and impediments along the way. So conflict can be of various types, and there can be many examples of conflicts in the story. And then you have climax. So climax is the most exciting or the suspenseful part of the story. So this is right towards the end when we kind of want to know, oh my God, what's going to happen? If you even think about all the movies which you've watched, this is the part where you really don't want to get up from the sofa, because you want to know what happens. Like, does the main character survive? Does the villain get killed? Does the character get what he or she has been looking for right from the beginning? So that's where the climax is, and the climax is what is the most interesting part of the story, because you've been reading all of this while just to get to the climax. And then you have falling action. So falling action is typically things become slower. It's not as fast anymore. Once the climax has been reached, the readers or the viewers of even a movie, they kind of understand what's happened. So the suspense has gone, but things are still falling into place. So this is an important part of the story, because it kind of ties everything in together so that we can ultimately go towards a resolution, which ties everything in and which ends in a satisfactory way. So the resolution is, how does the ending of the story make you feel, and what else could the writer have done? So this is interesting, because in this space, when you do this activity on your own, it's interesting to kind of write down what you felt too, because often stories might have been wrapped up with an ending and everything ends fine, but the readers might still feel incomplete, right? So like, there's often when I've read a story and I've thought that, oh, okay, I didn't really like this ending, something else could have happened. So this is a good way to kind of be a little bit more critical about the story which you're reading, and then write down a few thoughts as to why you didn't like it, what could you have done better if maybe you had written the story yourself. So this is a really great tool for you to kind of plot a story which you've already read and kind of understand structures of stories so that you can then apply it to your own writing. So this activity sheet is called Plotline Play-by-Play Plotting Along. On top, you'll kind of see the chart which I had also drawn, which kind of shows how the action moves faster as we go up and then reach the climax, and then things kind of slow down towards the resolution. So this is one of our first activities, and hopefully you can find a good story which you've read, or you can read a story which you've been looking forward to, and you can fill this in. If you have any questions at any point, feel free to reach out to us. So I'll move on to the next activity. The next activity is Plotline Play-by-Play story prompts. So this is interesting because once you actually learn how the entire story structure works, it's interesting to then write your own story. And now when you write your own story, instead of just randomly writing paragraph after paragraph, you can use this tool to kind of help you create that structure. So there's once again the same structure. So introduction, rising action, conflict, climax, falling action, and resolution. But this time when you write the story, it's good if you put down some of the main things which are happening in each of these buckets. And then when you actually start writing your story, you have a plot to kind of guide you. In the beginning, we've also provided a few sentences for you to kind of help you kickstart your thinking. If you're kind of struggling to start your story, these are some good lines which you can use, and some of these lines are actually from the books which are the children who had participated in the annual writing contest, the stories which they published. These are some of the first lines from there as well. So I'll read them out for all of you, and feel you can use any of these, or you can use any other line from your own mind, or you might already have a story in your mind, and this can help you kind of further move ahead. So some of the lines which we have are: it was a dark and stormy night inside the taco shop. The second line is: there are two very important characters in the story, and they are a dog and a squirrel. A long time ago, in the deep green and lush jungles of India, there lived a peacock. There was once a small city, but not many had heard of. And the last line is: next to our world exists a magical realm known as Arborea, where magi and their dragons live together in peace. So these are kind of just interesting story prompts to kickstart your thinking, but you don't need to necessarily use these. You can use your own prompts. You can come up with something on your own, and then you can use the same sheet to go through the story. So these are the two stories activities which I wanted to talk about today. So to kind of help you plot along, and then story prompts to get you started on your own story and help kind of guide you along the way. And this is the board which I kind of used. I'll just show it up here again just to kind of recap, but it's already there in the activity sheet. So once you do download those sheets, you'll be able to see them as well. So with that, our 3 set of workshops, it comes to an end, and I hope you really enjoyed watching these workshops. I hope you've been able to apply these learnings and do the activity sheets on your own. If at any point you've had any sort of issues, or if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to email us at feedback@ripplefoundation.ca, and feel free to get in touch with us anyway. We are going to now be moving forward to having more dedicated online workshops, where we'll be having our workshops via Zoom. So children can sign up for those dedicated workshops, and we'll be having facilitators specifically working with smaller groups of children to go through the lesson plans and to guide them and provide feedback on their stories and so on. So those are going to be more dedicated sessions. So look out for those. We are going to post those on our page as well. You can always go to our website to get more details on anything, and to stay updated on our workshops which we are running and all of the other activities which we are doing. So it was great. Thank you so much for joining us for all of these workshops. We hope you found them useful, and we'll definitely be in touch and hope to see you again at our workshops which are coming up. Thanks, and have a great weekend, and stay safe. Thank you.